potentially join the flow. And then at Chapter 2, we got a second broadcast from Zoria across all of the different billboards that said, basically, help us and you will be glorified, stand in our way and we will destroy you. Just prior to this, we saw them starting to construct these accelerators, the stellar accelerators, which influence the solar systems that they are built in. And then with the introduction of Chapter 2, we see that the Concord themselves have been doing their own research on these stellar accelerators, and now we have the observatories, both Triglavian and Concord, and in those sites, you decide whether or not you wish to help the Triglavians against the resident empire, or do you help the empires destroy the Triglavians? Either way, you fight a dreadnought class vessel of the side that you're fighting, and destroy the observatory there. The reward is the new Zernitra dreadnought by the Triglavians.
Got it. So let me just, in a very basic way, look back at the first chapter. The first chapter was that players were able to go into this environment, and they discovered there were some big things being built in there. And when they retreated, they thought they were safe. But this thing, the Ark, the Triglavians, came out after them. So the invasions had begun into known space, or empire space. And then the second chapter was, hey, pick a side. You can actually join these NPCs, or you can fight against them. And then this is now chapter 3 for invasions. Where are we now?
Well,
or what's it look like?
Siding with one side or the other in the Dreadnought site at this point has no permanent effect on your character. That decides who you fight. However, if you look at what they've been preparing for in the new chapter, it looks like we're going to see a more consequential decision where you're actually building up standings, and it's one side or the other, and that's a long-term decision as opposed to a short-term. Which side of the site do you want to run?
Makoto?
And it's worth noting that CCP Burger and CCPers at large have routinely commented that as this arc continues, that there will be potentially world-changing decisions made. So, we don't know anything about the mechanics, but what if the decision about whether to try to stop the Triglavians or help the Triglavians do whatever they're doing with the star, break connections, etc., what if there's a permanent or at least a long-lasting change to geography?
Yeah, I'm getting something from that too. I mean, if you were listening to the CCP guys talk before the trailer came out, my first guess about what's going to be happening here is that we will ultimately be the deciders of where the Triglavians end up settling in K-Space, because they're absolutely going to become a permanent presence.
Technically, are we looking at some kind of weathering effect where Triglavians exist? Or will they be able, are we going to see some of that wormhole system bonuses and debuffs?
Oh, certainly. I mean, you already get that with the stellar accelerators, and that's only the first step of what they're trying to do to these stars, as we see in the trailer. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes that come with it, but I think the whole thing basically is going to be, where are the Trigs going to settle, and that's going to affect, obviously, the places where they settle down.
It also appears as if this is going to be some sort of unifying moment for the empires, at least on some level. With all of this faction warfare hullabaloo, you've seen a lot of strain between the four empires. But as the Trig ramp up their threat, you see the formation of Edencom, which is effectively like Super Concord, as they are attempting to unify their forces to prevent the Triglavians from further incursions. It's also worth noting that while these invasions are happening in space, the Triglavians have been raiding facilities, stealing supplies. There's reason to believe that the stellar accelerators or observatories may be pulling matter out of the heart of stars They're harvesting all kinds of different resources. One of the reasons why blackout occurred wasn't the drifter attacks. It was because the Triglavians were attacking key places of infrastructure, which was causing them to have to kind of flex things over. And now, as was mentioned earlier, they've kidnapped an entire colony, or perhaps several colonies, in order to conduct human experimentation. So they are very much continuing to ramp up their science. And even during the Zordosh World Arc fight, what you would see all these readers. They are trying to, it would seem, experiment with their ability to manipulate space-time outside of the abyss, and monitoring their levels of entropic radiation and other such things.
Worth noting as well, when you talk about the stars and harvesting anything from them, first off, it'd be very neat to have actual content to do at these beautiful new stars. But one of the biggest important materials in the lore of Eve, something called Isogen 5, which is basically supposed to be some special isotope of isogen, which is really, really, it messes with space-time. It has a lot of energy going on there. And it is basically the MacGuffin that makes Wormhole the stuff possible in the first place. Big caches of Isogen 5 were collected from blue stars, and these things blew up, and that's what caused Apocrypha and the wormholes to open up in the first place. So getting anything out of stars has some interesting ideas coming from it.
Marcia, what do you think?
So what I was thinking about when the commission of the Concord Commission of the Empires working together, the EdenCom was mentioned, is that recently, like, the Empires have been not getting together, like, to an extreme degree, and like in faction war recently, the news in that area of the game is that Amar basically dropped an antimatter bomb on a fishing village recently on a planet. So like I might think that maybe the triangles, when they invade nations, maybe the other nations might end up backstabbing the other nations. So like maybe they're only working together on a surface level, and maybe it could mean like eventually like it changes with how faction war or other such
that is an
like
interesting
missions and
point.
such are carried out.
Oh, McLeod, somebody wants you to go to 58-second mark. Let's see what's there. Okay, Dirk,
Yeah.
do you have any questions?
Dude, I've probably got like a whole bunch of questions, and they're really stupid. It's like I am right now trying to decipher what the hell this means for the broader Eve, and I know that sounds really vague and also really enlightened at the same time or something. I don't know. Like, why does Nullsec care? Do wormholes care? Like, is there stuff in here that is more than just this carry on of this Triglavian sort of storyline?
Sorry, could you repeat the end of that? I missed some of that for some reason.
Is there stuff in here that does something more than carries on this Triglavian storyline that affects the broader game?
Well, the storyline is a big part of the game. We'll give it that. But I think what Dirk is saying is like, what are the players that don't indulge in lore? Like, what game changes are they looking at? How's this going to affect them? Why should they care about this trailer? Is that you?
Well, I mean, yeah. Let Makoto go.
So a lot of it depends on how exactly the mechanics shake out. Are we talking about temporary changes to map? Are we talking about permanent changes to map? Do the system weather effects only exist in the temporary basis, or do those start spreading through all of New Eden? Do we see more randomness and craziness? What happens if, for instance, like, okay, let's say Niarja, like, basically disappears off the map. What the hell does that do to the economy of New Eden? Like, in a very direct way, it may not necessarily affect someone who's, engaging in war fighting down in, say, like the south of Nullsec, but it does affect the economics of Eve, and so you can see a lot of knock-on effects from something that doesn't necessarily have like a day-to-day impact. And a lot of it's just going to depend on where exactly CCP is taking this, like what types of space they're affecting, how aggressive the Triglavians get, whether the players opt to support the Triglavians in doing something nasty and permanent, or so on and so forth.
All right, Carneros, question.
Okay, we have a question from Red Nutter in the Twitch stream who says, considering CCP just added something to the HUD, the heads-up display that shows wormhole effects, which according to lore is caused by certain stars, maybe when the Triglavians take over a star in a system, that will give you some sort of system-wide effects like wormholes, which is, I'll point out personally, is kind of what happens in an incursion. When Sancha's nation takes over a system, you'll see, system-wide effects. Could it be something like that? We have to watch out for.
So that is actually what is happening in invasions as it is. So the closer to an invasion foothold, the more impactful the evasion effects are. And then in addition to that, as it was mentioned during the tippy top phase of the invasion, you can now have the stellar accelerators be built, which also do a secondary effect on the system. So you can actually have two different weather effects applied in a foothold at the same time. And that stellar accelerator effect lasts after the invasion is over, if you do not destroy the stellar accelerator. And then you see now the speed effect in low-sec, which I've theorized for a little while is possibly an experiment by Concord, because we know that they are trying to develop their technology off of Triglavian technology. So it seems like one of the biggest themes of the Triglavian is this idea of the weather effects. And being able to bring that into the game. This is Abyss has weather. Depending on which filament you go into will dramatically determine how your ship will perform. And so we know that CCP is interested in creating quote-unquote weather patterns, short-lived effects that control or that impact systems, whether or not they're player built or not player built. That's one of the things that I find very interesting about the new upwell structure that we saw in the video. So the idea of creating more terrain in Eve, I think, is probably one of the high level goals out of all of this.
Suetonia, did you have anything else that you wanted to point out from this trailer? Anything come to mind? Or Pando?
Not specifically,
oh, sorry.
no.
And Pando, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just think like if we assume that new ship that we saw and the gun or the Vortum projector, that is actually that might just be the take on heavy bombers. I would be fucking happy about that, because I think the problem of bombers nowadays, like, they're very oppressive for other subcaps and so on, so they're very hard to balance. So when they first said, oh yeah, heavy bombers are going to be a thing, I was worried about them implementing it in like too much of a crazy way, because bombs, it's just hard to balance. But this take, like, I could see this be a way more healthy take on it. And yeah, so I'm like, as you can tell, I'm pretty much focused on that part of the whole trailer.
If I can also get in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, whenever they were talking about heavy bombers, back whenever.
User entered your channel.
One of the first things that came to mind, for me, instead of bombs, was, something like
User left
a
your channel.
miniaturized, less, OP version of, say, a Drifter Doomsday. So this builds right into that. I mean, you got the Arcing Vorton projector kind of as this, different sort of Doomsday, but, focused one-shot thing at a time nonetheless. That isn't, a bomb.
Yeah. I want to point out, though, in that trailer, you don't see it shooting at capitals, so I might be completely wrong when I say that might be the heavy bomber approach. It might just be a different chip type, which is also fine. I'm still hyped for that one. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, we see what looks like a new, the new Upwell ship. I don't know if it's the same one shooting that lightning bolt style weapon or not. I can't tell if it's it is. Okay, so new ship, new weapon. Looks like the size of what? A destroyer, cruiser?
Yeah, it looks
like a cruiser to me.
Cruiser,
it looks
right?
vaguely like the Draugr, which would be the command destroyer for the Triglavians. What I find very interesting about this is so if you have a weapon system that bounces between them, then you now have what could be amounted to an AoE weapon. It could be based on range between the targets. But that means that you now have a multi-target weapon that is functional in high sec, because if it would only bounce between valid targets, then it wouldn't accidentally splash into the wrong target, and so you could have more constrained combat and still use things. Normally you can't use things like smart bombs or any of that kind of stuff in high sec, either because of being concorded or just not being allowed.
Hold that frame, McLeod. Keep talking. Sorry.
So with this weapon system, they could introduce it basically anywhere, high sec, low sec, whatever, and it could be smarter in how it chooses its targets.
It does. I think Pando pointed this out. That looks like it's hitting subcap ships.
It does look like, it definitely looks like it's hitting subcap ships. McLeod, can you almost like back it up a frame or two, so that, like before we actually see the beam hit?
It's got a pretty spool up, I have to say.
Now, if you've seen this weapon before, you've seen it on the Doomsday. It's a Doomsday device that comes from structures, and that's usually hits the highest mass ship, in other words, the biggest ship first, and then the second biggest ship, and then the third biggest ship, and that's how it bounces. It finds the mass, and it can hit 3 or 4 or 5, who knows, maybe 8 ships until it runs out of energy. And this looks like it's hitting a lot smaller ships. So that's an interesting change.
First of all, like, there are some people that are saying that it's a caracal. You get a shot from it from above, and it's very obviously not a caracal. It actually looks closer to like a blackbird than anything else.
User entered your channel.
This weapon system has a lot of history, and that history is very closely tied with that Isogen 5 that was discussed earlier. So
User left your channel.
Isogen 5 is this old substance that can only be found supposedly in blue star systems. And one of its functions was the super weapon used by Jamil to destroy the Elder Fleet. That's the very first time that we saw this effect. And you can see it in the Empyrean Age trailer. Later on, when they made the Upwell weapon system, they said that they were inspired by the super weapon, but that it wasn't necessarily the same weapon system. But here you have that miniaturized version of roughly the same thing, and these entities are closely tied to what that was originally. And so it could be some minor level of like bringing back that tech into the modern world.
Right. The other thing that's obvious and that was, leaked out on purpose by CCP was the what looked like a new Doomsday coming off the Avatar. What do you guys see in that Avatar?
So that they've said before that effect was basically since they redid the Avatar, they have redone the effect for how the Doomsday looks on it also, or for just the way it fires it basically. So that seems to be that. I'm currently on Singularity fitting up with Titan so I can try to see how that looks myself. So
you went right to work, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I like the pretty stuff.
So that's maybe a decorative change, maybe not.
I mean, it could just be the visual effects on it were updated, and maybe the skin was updated. It does, but I'm wondering if maybe the geometry was also updated on the model itself.
And we are hearing it is on the test server, so you may want to go check that out.
Yep, it's on the test server, and it is a change in its geometry. The charge up the beam is actually really cool. There's a video, I think it was on Reddit, that was posted about it.
Okay. Arcia?
I wonder with the new weapon system having the ties to Isogen 5 and this trailer being released in the middle of like a economy and resource rebalance, that maybe there will be carefully picking what kind of resources they use to make these new ships and weapons.
The trig themselves actually use what's called Isogen 10, which can be found in the Abyss only. And in fact, one of the things that we use to build the T2 Triglavian ships, the salvage that we pull off of the wrecks themselves, is called lattice-locked Deca Isogen. So it seems like they're using this stuff to literally build their ship as well. And in the description of Isogen 10, it does describe that it may have some unusual properties if you were able to split it somehow. So these are different isotopes of the same material.
User entered your channel.
I
User
do want to point out
disconnected
that
from your channel.
Seasonal
Entered your channel.
is repeating the invitation to join them on Singularity for a mass test today, 1700 UTC, which is just about 45 minutes from now. And he's adding a further sweetener to the deal. We'll be testing out something to do with the new avatars. That sounds exciting.
Great. So 45 minutes. They're going to have an event on the test server, and there's going to be you're going to be able to see the Titan and its new Doomsday, its new look. And I guess there's going to be some kind of a sweetener.
Just a reminder, yeah, if you go to your Eve launcher, you can change the server where it says Tranquility Online, change it to Singularity and let it patch.
User left your channel.
All right, well, we're about to wrap up this first section. We're going to do an additional 45 minutes, but we're going to allow people, we're going to have kind of a town hall and allow people to ask questions inside our channel. That's Public Voice 2 on the Talking in Stations Discord. And we'll do that in just a minute. But first I want to say, is there anything else that you guys wanted to point out about this trailer, or any other comments you wanted to make?
I think we've mostly covered it. This has been a pretty good talk.
And people have to remember, this is not like after days of watching this, right? Like this literally landed on our plates and everybody is sort of reacting in the moment, right? So I am quite certain that over the course of the next, 72 hours, especially the lore guys and everything like that will be like, frame by framing this thing and, and figuring out more about it. So, this is definitely initial reactions out of this.
If you don't think I've been frame by framing this,
I know. I'm trying to give you a little more time to get really super specific.
Especially if, for instance, we figure out that the text on that sun, whether it's copy pasta from other Triglav stuff or whether there's some new component, or it's like, what does it mean?
From the words that have been found so far, what we can tell is that this is not text that has appeared elsewhere. It appears to be a fragment of a larger message.
Well, here's hoping that we get some more Triglavian messages soon, then.
Warp drive. I mean, I'm only sitting on like 1,000 Semiosis consoles. They've got to be good for something, right?
All right, so we're going to Pando and Sutonia and Francois. You guys have any last comments?
Not really.
Well, actually, there's a cool little link on CCP Games official site, that's ccpgames.com. They have a news article up, and in it says there's a bit of a few paragraphs about the new expansion, and I just there's like one part of it that really excites me, and it says new and mysterious ships and weapons in the description, and ships and weapons are plural, so there could be more than one ship or weapon coming into the next 3 months, which is really exciting to me.
So in addition to that Upwell, let's call it a cruiser for now, with its super weapon, in addition to that, there may be other weapons and ships.
Yeah, it could just be me reading too much into this news article, but they do use plurals when they describe ships and weapons.
So obviously the ships and weapons excite me. They always do. I'm the shipwright. In addition to that, I'm very excited to see what sort of a permanent presence the Triglavians will have in the game. I expect to see them around Blue Suns. I don't know if they're going to take over a section of space or if they're going to take over multiple small sections of space or individual systems, but their interest in Blue Suns has been clear from the start all the way down to this very last image.
Last question about this. Is there any indication on where these battles are happening that we see in the trailer? In other words, are these invasions coming to Nullsec finally? Any indications one way or another?
Most of the indications seem to be the Triglavians fighting with a certain empire in each of the different fights, so it doesn't indicate that it's necessarily Nullsec. But, nothing precludes it from coming to Nullsec. But it seems like the first thing is the Triglavians conquering the Amar city, and then we see, the Minmatar system too. So it seems to be the Triglavians fighting the empires.
That said, there's a lot of Titans in there, and while the empires do have Titans deploy, it would make sense that at least some of those conflicts were with the Capsuleers.
Well, we hope they're Capsuleers, because we want to play the game, right?
Well said. Okay, thank you very much. You guys, on short notice, came together and gave us a lot of insight into this new Eclipse trailer that's announcing the second quarter of development for 2020. So I want to thank Sutonia, Pando, Fansui, Arcia, Makoto, Uriel, Ash Tarathi. Thank you guys for giving us a lot of insight. Dirk?
Yeah?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up.
Hey, thanks for waking me up for this. Honestly, I'm still trying to process some of this, and of course, we all love trailers, regardless of what the deep insight of them means and things like that. But yeah, I'm still trying to process this and figure out whether or not I don't know.
Dirk's the street man. We needed him.
Right. Also want to thank everybody that followed us, and there were some subscribers here as well. I want to thank you guys. You can join our Discord and hang out with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to open up the floor, have kind of a town hall, and take questions from you guys and take discussion from you guys. If you have something to add, now's your chance. And we'll also be looking at chat as well. So don't go away. We'll be right back. And sorry, last thing I wanted to say was Carneros, thank you very much for grabbing the questions.
Thank you. Thanks, January.
And thanks, January, for getting those questions and controlling chat. And also McLeod for quick style troubleshooting that got us up and running. That was grace under pressure. Thanks, McLeod. We will be right back with more Eclipse trailer.
User entered your channel. User left your channel.
Buy crispity crunchity peanut buttery Butterfinger and get ready for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Get powerful in-game content. Collect them all. game better with Butterfinger.
Okay, that was pretty cool.
User entered your channel.
science they've done to themselves, they're attempting to conduct it to other people to replicate their results.
All right, I want to hear next from Taylor, who's in channel here.
Well, yeah. Hello and good day. Can you hear me?
User entered your channel. User entered your channel.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
User entered your channel. User left your channel.
Alright, I still got on the kill map. Ain't got the bounty. I'm excited.
User entered your channel. User left your channel. User disconnected from your channel. User entered your channel. User left your channel.
Yeah. Going in every day.
User entered your channel. User entered your channel. User entered your channel. User left your channel.
welcome to the channel. Next in line to be in the fleet. As we wait, I'm on
User
hold
entered your channel.
in our hunting tornado or any suspects in known players that go criminal. I'm being I'm doing a ninja kill. Ninja kill. Getting that kill that isn't really fine. Whatever I'm gonna do it. Adding my kill board. That's what I'm doing.
User left your channel.
Oh, dang. Oh, it is quite.
User left your channel.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
User entered your channel. User left your channel.
drive active. The contrast on this guy is insane. You see the red and the green. And the blue, like, it would be behind. Warp drive active.
User entered your channel.
Dang, almost an hour. Anyway. Ooh.
Warp drive active.
User disconnected from your channel.
And another.
Warp drive active. Connecting. Skill training completed.
What are we on? You for I don't know which side won.
get the WarpTo Me fleet actually want it based on the past response.
Warp drive active.
Someone's doing a freedom point. It. On the ball. If I whether I'm right. Right.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
Good.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
Here's my what's it gonna meet?
Entered your channel.
Not in the next system, but
User left your channel.
Warp drive active.
here.
Warp drive active.
User disconnected from your channel.
Warp drive active.
Wait.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
Freaking station.
User
Idiot.
entered your channel.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
You got way over.
User entered your channel.
Warp drive active.
User entered your channel. User entered your channel. User entered your channel. User left your channel.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
User disconnected from your channel.
That one's interesting. Ooh, nope. Oh, freaking him.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
Oh, that's why. Like that one.
User left your channel. Go.
Warp drive active.
User left your channel.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
User joined your channel. User disconnected from your channel. User left your channel. Hey, wake up. User left your channel.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
WFC AAA, other lodges, and new pilots to your watch list.
Is that what I got back there?
There we have our lodges. Full fleet align only.